Okay, students. So today we will see the database architecture. As I told you, the little bit difference we have the term architecture and structure. Structure means the representation and layout of the our system of talking about the database. So we can say the database system representation layout. The architecture is more important, in which we have to understand what is mean by the database architecture, following by the its functionalities, component functionalities we can say. In this lecture, we will see the system architecture and what is also known as the tier architecture. Why I'm taking the tier architecture before the system architecture? Because system architecture is mentioned in your book, that is the NDF course book. But when talking about the tier architecture, so tier architecture is basically available over the internet. So you do not have any kind of confusion. So to avoid your confusion, it is better idea to I'm taking the both kind of thing over here. So let me start the first point over here, that is the architecture of the database management system. So as you can read out some points over here, database architecture basically involves to design, deployment, and development part of the our system. So after putting some information into the database, so how this information is put into the database management system and how it is to be managed, all these things are undercome into the this part. But all these are the our user end, how we are putting and how we are getting. But the point is that how the information is managed, how the data are managed in the system. So it is depend upon on the our design, it is depend on the our deployment, it is depend on our development. So based on this concept, we have a architecture of the database management system, and it describes to help in the development, implementation, design, and maintenance of a database, and that store and organize the information for any kind of the interface as we have discussed. So the overall the concept basically depends on the architecture. So it can be designed as a centralized, decentralized, or hierarchical. Basically, the term it defines that the hierarchical or centralized, decentralized means depend on the nature of the data model we are using. So based on the data model, so we can have the various kind of the architectures. But the primary we have to use the architecture, but other part is following by the model. So it can be designed as a centralized, decentralized, hierarchical, means we are talking about the data model. So we will see data model details. So first part we have over here the our tier architecture. So let me explain with the tier architecture. So architecture of DBMS, this is available over the internet. So you people not have any kind of confusion. So to avoid your confusion, to remove your curiosities, I am taking this picture in simple way, that is the architecture of the database management system. It is divided into the three parts. One is the one tier architecture, second one is the two tier architecture, and third one is the three tier architecture. Here I need your involvement to. So far you have spent time to implement the project. So let me just know the few things from your side. Whenever I need to ask any questions, so you people are required to speak something over here. So our tier architecture we can have over here. So I have divided into the our architecture into the three parts. One is the one tier, two tier, and three tier. Let me explain all the things properly. One tier architecture. So in one tier architecture, it is written over here, the database is directly accessible to the database, or it is also available on the database. So whenever I need to communicate to the database directly, then what I'm talking, I'm just dealing with the one tier architecture. One tier architecture is dealing with the user is directly communicate to the database. But very frankly speaking, over the internet, you can assume over the internet you are logging to the web page Google, or you can use a Gmail or any kind of the mail server you are accessing. You are not accessing directly the particular mail server database. So that is a different kind of the architecture we have. But in the case of the one tier architecture, we are directly communicating. It's a very simple example. In my laptop, in my desktop, in my any notebook, if I have created a database and I'm accessing the database directly without any interface, without any other intermediate application. So this is what actually this is known as the one tier architecture. So when I'm trying to learn something over here, when try to type something into my database or from my laptop, my database installed and I'm accessing some data from my laptop, and this is known as the one-tile architecture, a simple example. So what is written over here? One-tile architecture is used for the development of the application where a programmer or developer directly communicate with the database for a quick response. So while implementing the project, while implementing the any system over our laptop, so I'm communicating directly to my database, which is stored on my laptop. So this is a one direction. Now this is fully clear to all right now.
Yes, sir.
Any doubt over here, student? Please tell me right now. Any doubt?
Sir, can we also call it a
Sir, can
centralized
you give
architecture?
sir, can
Can
you
we?
give some examples?
Okay. Suppose I am assigning a project tool. So what you will do while using the any kind of the tool, there could be the Python or any Java or any other tool, you are storing the some data on your laptop or your database. And database will also install your machine also. So one-tile architecture means there will be one machine on which I am directly communicating my database without any problem. But here, what is happening over here? You are need to understand one-tile architecture is basically saying to us, if I'm using the Python or Java application, then I'm making an interface actually. The point we should be clear to all right now. We can take a simple example. If you're writing something to the database directly without any intervene or without any interface, then you are what you are doing, you are directly communicating to the database, that is known as the one-tile architecture we are following. Let us example, if you will work on the NoSQL or any kind of the tool, then you are writing the some command or you are writing the some queries to access the database without any interface. We are not talking about the Java, Python, or any other kind of interface. We are directly access the database. That is means known as the one-tile architecture only. This is the point. But when you are using the any other application like the Java or Python or any other application like PHP or HTML or any kind of the other application you are using, at that moment what you are doing, you are communicating to the uh, database with the help of some other interfaces, and that is known as the two-tier architecture. I will tell you, but before that, let me clear to all of you. One-tier architecture should be clear. So that is the point. So user is directly communicating to the database. That is the point. It is just like simple example when you are trying to access the contact detail of your phone number. So you are accessing the contact details or you are directly communicating the contact detail only. But if I'm accessing the contact detail from the other sources or application, at the time I'm changing my architecture into the one type to two type. So at the time, one kind of the interface will be available. But in this case, if a user and any user will try to access the database without any interface or directly communicating the database, at the time, this is known as the one-tile architecture. And that is a little bit different, we have to understand. Now, this is clear to all right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just let me know right now, are you able to access the BTOP? Okay, so you are accessing. Are you really able to access the BTOP database directly? No, because one there is a because there is an application, that is BTOP application. With help of the web browser, you are trying to access the database of our VIT Bhopal University. So this is the not a one-tile architecture. So this is simple example. I'm taking in the my laptop database install. I'm accessing the database without any interface, any application. So this is known as a one-tile architecture. This is simple meaning. Okay, so now it is clear to all right now.
Yes, clear.
Student asked me the question, and I didn't hear her voice properly. So can you repeat your question once again? Or
Sir, I was saying that can we also call it a centralized architecture?
so centralized and little bit different, because centralized means centralize, you can say, but the problem is over here. The centralized means there will be the one database and other databases are connected to with the database. and you cannot access the centralized database directly. And some application or some interface will be. So centralized means there will be the one master database and other will be the slab databases. So that is the meaning we have a little bit different. So centralized database will be available when talking about the internet-based application or internet-based resources we are accessing. So at the time centralized will be applicable. That is a little bit difference we have to understand.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
See, in the databases, in any technology, if you try to look the anything in digital ways, so we have various kind of the flavors, and depend on the requirement we can manage. So centralized basically term is much applicable when we are using the database that is falling via the internet base or remote base we are accessing. But other factors will be involved with the centralized security should be, so security currency should be there. So that's why we are not talking about the centralized or decentralized or hierarchical data. We're talking about the either one tier and two tier. So people get confused because over the internet, this term you can easily see. So a student will always confuse, you taught us the system architecture only, but in the over the internet we have seen the architecture is also available. So that's why I'm taking this now. Okay, so this one tier architecture is clear to all right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So, what is a two-tier architecture? Two-tier architecture is also a similar to one-tier architecture. Just we are putting a one layer, and that layer is known as the interface layer. And very practically, we can say. So, with the help of the any PHP program, with the help of the any HTML program, you are trying to access the database. So, as a user is not directly access the database, user will not able to communicate directly to the database. User will communicate to the database via an interface, and that interface could be any programming interface or any kind of the API. API means application programming interface. So let me show the image, the diagram by which the picture will be clear in your mind. So two-tier architecture database based on the client server machine. So in this type of the architecture, application on the client side and can interact directly with the database at the server side. But the interaction between the client and server, there is a term we have a application programming interface. So in the earlier days, those who were known all these terms, that is a ODBC. ODBC basically an interface. It is an interface. And that is also available in the Microsoft control panel setting, in which we have a system administrator. In the system administrator tool, we have a ODBC kind of interface. So earlier days, what was happened? So I'm telling the simple story, and that was a true story. And for accessing the database, so you can use any database. Just example, I'm using the Oracle database and MySQL database. MySQL and Oracle database now both are the tie-ups today, but previously they were the different. So if I need to access the Oracle database, and Oracle is not a product of the Microsoft, that is the point we have in our mind. So what happened if I need to access the third-party tool via Microsoft Windows operating systems? Then what happened? An interface is required, and such interface is known as the Open Database Connectivity, and name stands for the ODBC. And if we need to access the database via Java application. So Java is what basically which is designed by the Sun microsystems, but now it is tied up with the Oracle. So when you're looking for the Java, so when in the 1998 I worked on the Java when I tried to implement a project for the Java. So what I did, I used the JDBC ODBC interface. So with help of the JDBC ODBC bridge interface, I have to access my database. So database could be any one of the tool. It doesn't mean Oracle, MySQL, or SQL Server, or Ingress and IBM DB2. It doesn't mean. But if I need to access any third-party tool database via Java application, then Java is different from the Microsoft because it is not designed by the Microsoft. So with the help of Java application, I need to access database via Windows operating system. So what happened at a time? An interface is required, and that is known as the JDBC ODBC bridge, and that is known as the Java database connectivity. So, but this is now changed in today's time. What happened in the when you have the Java 1.7 and now we have the Java 1.8. So till Java 1.1 to 1.7, I have spent many years. Then I found over here Java 1.1 to 1.7, and you have to use the JDBC ODBC Prism. But Java 1.8 version onward, you are not required to make a JDBC ODBC bridge interface. That is a different kind of the interface are required. And while using the Java application with the help of the NetBeans, then NetBeans provide an interface that is known as a JDBC. So JDBC is the name of the interface by which you can access the database. It doesn't mean what kind of database you are using. It could be MS Access, Oracle, or MySQL. So that is a point you have to understand. So why I'm telling all this information to all the people, because I have spent many times to the Java, I have spent many times to the Python, I have spent many times to C programming. So that's my experience I'm speaking over here. So in the two-tier architecture, what is happening? We have to follow the two steps. One step is used to our machine. Our user will interact to the application, and application will interact to the database. But so this application is followed by the some interface, and that is known as the application programming interface. Now this is clear to all right now. The idea is clear to all right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can anyone tell me right now, have you implemented any small project with the help of the any databases? So please you can share your idea right now.
No, sir.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I can take an example. Suppose I'm giving a project. So what you will do, you have to use a database. Now, can you tell me right now what is the database you want to use? Can you tell me which database you want to use? Just take an example and tell me which database you want to use.
Sir, SQL.
Okay, SQL. SQL, which SQL? SQL Server, MySQL. So because SQL itself is a statutory language, that is a different.
MySQL.
Okay, MySQL you can take. SQL 93 you are speaking, then I will be happy because SQL 93 was the previous version of the MySQL server. So MySQL you are going to use. Okay. And in which application you want to implement a project? Tell me anyone. Tell me anyone. In which just
Library server.
that is a project name you are speaking, but in which language, in which tool you want to implement?
Python.
Okay, I can agree this point right now. So I'm just adding one more slide over here to explain my idea. See, this the concept should be clear, so that's why I'm here. See, you want to use the MySQL, so I can write over here that is a MySQL you want to use. So this MySQL is your database, so I can write over here MySQL. This MySQL is your database, so I can write over here this is known as a database, and this is known as the backend. Okay, this is known as the backend, and this is known as the backend in some time, so that's why we have the backend. The concept and the picture, the idea must be clear to all while studying anything in my course. So this is a database, and the MySQL is the name of the database name, and this is known as the backend too. And you want to implement something in the Python programming. So this Python is what? Python is our programming language. So with help of the Python tool, you want to access some information from the MySQL databases. So we can make an interface like this. So it seems to us we are accessing back to this database MySQL, and this Python is known as our integrated development environment tool, or we can say we are using. So we are using the Python IDE, or with help of the Python IDE, we are accessing the database. So this is known as our application. This is known as our application. And this is also known as the front end. While discussing, this is known as the front end. This is known as the front end. Front end. See, that is the term we have to keep in mind. I will tell you where the backend and front end term will be applicable. So, as a user will interact with the application program. So, user is what? User is our one component, we can say. So, what is happening over here? You can understand. User will interact to the Python programming to access the database. So, the information which will represented by the Python to the MySQL, and MySQL will respond to the Python to show the data. So now user will be happy to see the data. So what are the number of steps we are taking? We are taking the 2 steps. One is this step, user interact with our application, and application program will interact with our database. This is the second step. So that's why we have the 2-tier architecture. Now, so far the concept is clear. Tell me right now. So far the concept is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, with the help of Python programming, you are accessing the MySQL. MySQL is not implemented by the developer, which are the developer of the Python. So, if we are accessing the third-party tool with the help of the any other mechanism, so there are some interfaces are available. Okay, there could be one interface, there could be the more than one interface. So these interfaces are known as the API. These are known as the API. API stands for the application programming interface. This could be the example of the API. We can have the web servers. Okay, web servers. These are known as the web servers. Small utilities by which we can access the database, by which we can communicate the database. Okay, so that is the term you have to keep in mind. Now, backend and the front end will applicable when we're talking about the client server model. When we're talking about the client server model, this term is much applicable when discuss about the client server model. In the client server model, what happened in the client server model? In the client server model, there will be one server. As I can take, there is one server, and there could be the many clients. So client 1, client 2, client 3. So with the help of our application, this server will keep the database, and that is known as the database server. If a server keeps the database, then it is known as the database server. So if with the help of these database server, if you try to access the many client requests and response on time, so what the operating system will do? Operating system will make an interface, and with the help of the operating system algorithm, that could be first come first serve round robin, the response will be sent back to the respective clients. So that is something which is required to put by the operating system. So that is a 2-tier architecture. This simple example I am taking here for a better. Now the idea is clear to all right now. What is mean by the 1-tier architecture and what is mean by the 2-tier architecture. Now it is clear to all right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Any doubt so far you have? So please you can ask me.
So what is the role of these API like web servers? Like can't
yeah. See. This is the example I'm taking. The API web server is kind of the API I'm taking over here, but it could be the non-web server we can also have. But nowadays, while developing any project on the web-based application, when we are designing any application which is following by the web-based, so at a time we have the web server. Just like example of the Tomcat, Apache Tomcat. Apache is the name of the company, and Tomcat is the name of the web server. And just like example of the different applications we have. So Tomcat and Apache, this is the Apache Tomcat is the famous web server. So that is a point we have to keep in mind when we're designing any application which is web based. So an interface is required. So that interface is web server is the best example. Another kind of the interfaces could be just like example, if you're not designing the web application, so just like ODBC, okay. But ODBC is nowadays out of the market because no one is using this technology. So ODBC is a kind of the interface by which you can use. So that is the point. Web server we can take an just a Tomcat. Why I'm taking the Tomcat? Tomcat is the name of the web server and Apache is the name of the company. This is the web server. So all these are what these are the depend on the requirement. The API could be different types. Web-based application, if you're writing, then web server will be applicable. You are not designing any web-based application, then others are available. And while implementing the project in the PHP programming, PHP scripting language, and we are using the MySQL databases, then different kind of the web server will be available. That is the Gem. Yeah, I'm remembering. That is a Gem.
So actually, my doubt was, what is the role of an API? Like,
Yeah,
what does it?
API. I'm speaking. So this Gem is the name of the web server which provides the interface between the PHP and database. So the role of the API I'm speaking over here. If this is the MySQL designed by the XYZ company, X company, and Python is designed by the Y company. So what happened? How this X company based tool communicate to the Y tool? So definitely some interfaces are required. So these interfaces are used to provide the communication between two different non-similar kind of the branch. So we have this interface is required. But this interface is much applicable when we are implementing the our model in the client server base. So that's why I have written the word over there backend and front end. So user will interact to the MySQL directly. That is also possible. If user will interact directly to the this MySQL, so we have the point architecture because there is no other kind of the application, no other kind of the interfaces as required. But when user will interact to the MySQL via Python programming or any kind of the application, then we have a two-tier architecture because the user has to follow the two steps a simple way. And logically, I can speak. So that's why we are. And the role of the web server is to provide the interfaces between the application program and database. That is a simple role. Now clear?
So sir, basically it allows the SQL queries we enter in the IDE application to be
Yes,
sent
of
to
course.
the
Yeah, of course. But the point is, you listen over here. If you are using the any database tools ID by default you are using, then you are not following the two architecture because while implementing the any query, so I will use the direct ID of the MySQL. So I will directly communicate to the database without any third-party application. That is the by default I'm using its own application, the databases. So at the time I'm following the one tier architecture. But if I'm accessing the database by any other application, that I'm following the two tier architecture. That is a
So while programming in Python, we have a module MySQL connector. So is MySQL connector an API? That
yes,
module itself.
yes, definitely. You are on the right point because that is the syntax that provide the interface to the MySQL. That is we are looking for the growth point right now. So with the help of the see how we can communicate. So we have to put the some syntax, we have to put the some commands. So these are the some interfaces. These interfaces are definitely implemented to the some software as well. So they are following the part of some chunk of the code. Definitely. So MySQL connector is a kind of the interface. Definitely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So basically, API helps in making the this and independent, like language independent application, language independent. Like we can use any language to contact with the database.
Yes, of course, of course. See, that is the reason with the help of these API, you can make the compatibility program. So if I wrote a program on the Windows operating system, so but my friends having a system which is supported by the Motorola or any non-Windows operating system. So what happened? If it is supported, MySQL supported by the other operating system, so definitely I can transfer my code over there and my code will run perfectly without any problem because I made my programming followed by the interfaces. So definitely with the help of my code, my friend is also able to access the data information from the MySQL. So that's why we feel that we are accessing the information without any problem. So just look at in your daily life, you can use any operating system. With the help of any Windows operating system, you can access the information from the Google server. And now look at in your mobile. Mobile is following the Android operating system, but you are accessing the same information. Nothing is lost. So this is what this is only all are supported by the APIs. And APIs implementation is not an easy job. API implementation is the biggest task. Yes, tell me right now. Tell me any doubt in this two second API or two API? Sorry, third second two architecture, two architecture.
No, sir.
Okay, so but in the third we can say the two die architecture after two die architecture, three die architecture is just little bit amendment in the two die architecture. So what we have? We have this is just only the different example, but I have explained the example simple. So in the one die architecture, what you're observing, you can say there are the file server in which the files are stored in from the database, so system is communicate that. So that is a. But in the two-tier architecture, we have a database tier and the database server we have. So with the help of the API, you are trying to access the information. That is a little bit difference we have to understand. Over this diagram is followed by the client server model. So this diagram is followed by this. But in this case of the one tier, server is not required because we are accessing the information directly to the database. That is a little bit different we have to understand. So this is a different way how I explained, but I have already explained over here. This is the same things we have explained. So no need to discuss over here. I have explained the same concept with help of the different way by taking our diagrammatic approaches. So no need to discuss over here. This is the way. Yes, one was three-tier architecture. I was coming over here. Yes, is it visible to all the three-tier architecture slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it is better idea to I can explain the three-tier architecture with the help of the example. So, but before that, let me understand or let me clear to all what are the various terms we have. Three-tier architecture is saying to us this is available over the internet. So beyond the client server model, when we have to connect our system by the internet, so our internet is not connect, our system is not connected by the any server directly. There are many layers we can have. So what are those layers? And those layers are represented by the presentation layer, application layer, and database layer. So when talking about the presentation layer, the presentation layer is also known as the client layer because this is our client computers. So our mobile device, our laptop, our desktop could be the part of our client machines, and this is also done by the client layer. And by the application by which I'm accessing. So with the help of the Google applications from my mobile I'm accessing, and from the Mozilla web browser I'm accessing my emails. Okay, and from the other desktop I'm using the Chrome. So with the help of the various applications I'm accessing my information over the internet. So I'm speaking once again. You have not gone through the computer network subject, but I'm speaking my system or my computer or my laptop or my mobile, any device is not directly connected to our server. There are many layers. Okay, so when you study the computer network, then you can feel what are the various layers by which your system will be connected. But for the database oriented, we have three important layers. So let us understand all these three important layers. The presentation here is saying to us you are having a device and the device will contain some application by which your machine will connect to the server via internet. So next we have the application. This application layer is known as the business logic layer, and this logic layer it acts as a middle layer between the client and database server for accessing and for transporting information. And this is just seem to us it treated as a interface layer, we can say. And database layer is a layer and that is store the actual information. So we are accessing the information. It is just like example. We can understand this is point. This example. This slide is visible to all right now. This slide I have shown one slide where the all the diagrams are available. One
Yes,
tier,
sir.
two
It's
tier,
visible.
yeah. So this is my drawn diagram. So I'm explaining one tier architecture in what we have user is directly coming to database. Two tier architectures what we have, user is connected by the database via some APIs. But in the three tier architecture you can observe over here. Yes, you can observe over here. User is connected by a database, so we feel that we are directly communicate to the database. It seems to us, and we feel, but it is not happen with the us. That is the point. What happened? User will first communicate to the internet. So internet is what basically network of the network. Internet has own definition, that is a network of network. So we don't know what are the various uh, what is the various systems by which our devices are connected. Because over the internet we will use some internet devices just like the router, hub, switches. Okay, so our system is not directly communicate to the server. It will communicate to the via internet, and internet will contain the many devices. Those are known as the internet devices. So I am just trying this example. See, this is a device. This is known as the internet devices. Suppose that. So first I will connect to the internet devices, and then the other system by the internet. Okay, and then the device will connect to the other kind of internet devices. So there are many layers we have, but all these things are representing by the application layer, because by application layer our information are connected. So user will connect it by this point. So user will use the any application. So that is known as the Mozilla, Chrome, or any kind of the tool. So user will use the user label point. So which is known as the presentation layer. What is my presentation I can done over here? So what is my request I can make to the my database to get the data? It is simple example I am taking here. As a user, I'm trying to search the notes over the database for the Google. So what happened? Google, I'm accessing Google. So you can feel now we have a Google co.in. But when talking about the 10 years or 15 years ago, we have only the one server that is known as the google.com. But after some times it is happened, our server is divided into the various country wise. So now we have a google.co.in for India origin. When talking about the UK origin, so we have the google.co.uk. Now when we need to search any information from the US, then we have the google.co.us. So now you can see this points. Now our server also divided into the various levels. So all these are managed by our application layer point. So what they are doing, they are providing the interface. So they are providing or exchanging some data to the users level to the database level. So that's why it is known as the three-tier architecture. In three-tier architecture, we are communicating the database server not directly via internet. That is the important point we have to understand. For explaining for removing curiosity, I have drawn the another example by which the more picture will be clear in your mind. So this is the diagram. This is diagram. Now this diagram is clear to all right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it visible? Okay, good. So what you are observing, user is directly communicating to the database. So we are having the one tier. Now user is directly communicating to the API via the database. So we have the two tier. But in the three tier architecture, what we have? This is the point which is representing by the our layer. So this is the user. User will use the presentation layer. User will use the presentation layer. User will use a presentation layer. Presentation layer, and after the presentation layer, So I'm accessing the google.co.in. So as I am just sending a message to the google.com. So my information first will pass on to the my local server, that is my city server, and then after the city server will pass on information to the country server, and the country server will pass on the information to the main server, that is the US, where the Google server is available. So now after that the information will pass. So I feel my country server will pass my request to the US server, that we know. There are many channels, there are many networks from which my information will pass on. And overall through the various devices, you can see these are the various devices. All these devices are known as the network devices, and example of network devices could be the router, okay, bus, switches, and hub. So now I will be a part of the internet. My information will flow over the internet if routes are free. If routes are not free, so my information will come after a few couple of seconds. But we feel that after putting the information, we are getting some message within the 0.26 second, or sometimes I'm getting the information over the Google 0.12 seconds. What happened? If I'm getting some message lately due to network was busy, and it is really happened with the many times with us. But this is done by the our business logic layer, and this business logic layer is also represented by the applications point. So that is the point you are required to understand. And again it is connected, it is connected, and again it is connected with the main network. So business logic, this means there are some logic, there are some other applications of the related to the network, and by which you are accessing information. Now our information will pass to the database server. Now, and database is available over the USA. So database layer, so that is to be identified the database layer, because this database server is not accessible by the single person. This database is accessible by the many servers. You are not a single person who is accessing the google.com at the one moment. There are many crore people who are accessing the google.com same time, in the same moment. So database server will see which is the first request is coming. So based on the algorithmic approach, the database server will respond by the help of the applications to the machine. So sometimes we can log in after the immediately, and sometimes we have to wait for the few couple of seconds, and we feel that okay, network is busy. That is a could be the one kind of the reason, and that is really happening in the serialized. So this is the overall our architecture, and that is known as the our theta architecture. Okay, and everything is also written over here in the test definition. In this definition, you have to understand what is written over here, and I'm explaining the same thing with the help of the. So in the database architecture, you can understand client and the server. Okay, in this architecture, the client cannot directly interact with the server. It features such as the data backup, recovery, security, concurrency control make the most common use architecture for designing the database management. So it is connected via internet. So that is a simple example I am taking away. So these are the various layers by which our information will pass on. And these layers are the transformed into the different names of the layer in the computer, and nothing especially. But for the concern of the databases, its names are presentation layer, application layer, and database layer. The application layer also known as the business logic layer. So this is the point you have to keep in mind, that provide the interface, that provide the mechanisms to exchange the data from the client to the database. Yes, tell me right now. Is it visible to right now? It is clear to all right now?
Yes, sir.
So one tier, two tier, three tier architecture of the database system, and it is available over the internet. So do not get confused. So that's why I've just given the message over here. Now in the examination, I can ask the question, explain the architecture. So when I'm asking the question, explain the architecture, then you have to explain the system architecture only. But if I'm expertly right, explain the tier architecture, then you have to explain one tier, two tier, three tier architecture with the examples only. That is the little differences you have to keep in mind properly. If I'm asking only the architecture or system architecture, then you have to use the system architecture, and which is coming to the after some time. But when I'm asking the expertly type architecture, then you have to explain one tier, two tier, three tier architecture. That is the point you have to understand properly. Okay. Now, is it clear to all right now, or any doubt so far? These three tier architecture, these one tier, two tier, these is the tier architecture clear to all.
Yes, sir.
So I have one doubt.
Okay.
So this application layer, it doesn't mean the application that we have created in order to contact with the database, right?
See, my dear, when you are trying to access any information in the technology aspect, everything will be done by the application. When you're listening the FM by the any mobile device, so that is also supported by the FM application. So all the our different internet devices, there are some applications also to be installed into the form of chips and integration circuits. So without any application, you are not able to access any information. So the application is available in our pocket as well. That is the point you have to understand.
Okay,
Okay,
sir.
now, okay, so without any application, you can't do anything. See, hardware and software are the business of each other. They can't live without human. Without the hardware, software is nothing, and without the software, hardware is nothing. This is only just piece of the some components. So if I'm installing some application into my component, then I have the device that is followed by the sub mechanism. That is the point we have to understand. Okay, tell me right now. Is it really to all right now?
So the business layer is basically the master server, which cannot be accessed directly. So it uses several um, small servers to communicate.
Business logic layer basically it defining that there are some logic for accessing the our information from the server, and server will pass the information to the business, and business logic will pass to the information to respectively clients, because we are only not a single person who are accessing the server at the same moment. So business logic means there are some logic and which will pass the information to the right person. That is the point. So that's why name is only represented by over here business logic. Business means they are not dealing with the monetary system. They are dealing with the data. That is the point. So logic means there are some logic. We are not a single person who is connected to a particular server only. Unlike us, there are many users who are connected with the same server at the same moment. So the information will pass to the right person to the right time. That is the logic we have to apply, and this overall mechanism to be handled by the our computer network system architecture or computer network system model. So that is not a part of the this point right now, so I'm not discussing that point, but we have to understand this application there we feel it is simple, but there are many other layers which are associated with application layer and presentation layer and database layer as well. In the computer network, there are the 7 main layers by which our information will flow from system to another system. Under database context, we have only these 3 layers. That is it.
So isn't business logic layer the centralized server if it handles the
Uh,
data from
uh,
various users?
you can say this could be like a centralized server which pass our information to the main server. You can say it depends on the representation structure of the our database model. So we can have the many centralized database. Of course, we can have the many masters. We can have the slabs. So it depends on the architecture. But in this logic layer, the business logic layer just provide an interface between the client to the main server, and that is a database server. So that could be the one business logic server. Of course, it can be have. It can have.
Okay. And so if we take up the that example of Google, so we have several servers in a state, country, and then it reaches the main server
Yes,
in form
of
of
course.
digital packets.
Yes, of
So
course. Yes, of course.
the transition from the client server, the client to the database through this centralized server, that's what business logic layer is.
Yes, of course, because with the help of our local server, with the help of the state server, with help of our country server, the IP address generated by the help of the these servers. So we can easily identify what is your unique IP address. What is the unique identification of your machine over the internet? So all these are compromised by the various kind of the server. But now technology hasn't changed into this era. We're talking about the earlier days. We're talking about the 1998 or 2010. So there was only the one server in of the country. So the computer will not communicate directly to the local server. The computer will directly communicate to the country server. But now it has been changed due to some other features. Those are the data backup, recovery, and security control. That's why it has been changed into that. Because now at that moment, talking about 20 years ago, where there are less people who are connected to the Google server. But now every time your mobile is connected to the internet, so now you become a part of the this internet connected society. So now in this today era, we are able to see every time we are connected to the Google, every time we are connected to our machines, the system, to the internet. So now over the internet we have the crore of many the people. So that is the reason. So that's the point you have to understand. Yes, tell me. Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so now after this understanding these three kind of the architecture and that we can see over the internet, and now come to the point that is the book example. This is our system architecture. This is our system architecture which is available inside our Henry F. Code book, and that is the standard architecture. So when I ask any question what is mean by the system architecture, then you have to explain this diagram. When I'm asked the question what is mean by the architecture of the database, then you have to draw this diagram. But when I explicitly I'm asking the explain the one type, two type, three architecture, then you have to explain these three different kinds of architecture. So a little bit difference you have to understand. So I'm not going to its theoretical part. I'm explaining every component, what is the architecture of the database and how it will work. That is the point we have to understand. So let me start from the top to down, all the steps properly. So first we have a naive user, application program, and sophisticated user and database administrator. The connection, the diagram we have to keep in mind, or you have to keep the image in your mind for your examination purpose properly. Okay, let me explain all these things properly. So first we have a name user. The name user are the novice user who just know the much. We just use the application interfaces to interact with the our system. So name user is connected directly. A name user is connected directly with the application interfaces, and that is a application program object code will execute and nothing else. But the application programmer are the we can say the specialized users who will write the application, who will write the program for the databases. So at a time, as we know, the application programmer will write, and after writing the application program, definitely database compiler. So with the help of the database compiler, our code will be executed with the help of the linker, of course. So NC and C++, as we have seen, the linker and loader. These are the two terms we have to understand. When a program will use the linker and loader, so what is the role of the linker and loader? I'm speaking over here. So listen, loader will load our program from the main memory to the from the secondary memory to the main memory, and vice versa. And what is the role of the linker? Linker will connect. All these are the small kind of interfaces you can say. With the help of these kind of the small interfaces, this linker will connect our program to the memory properly for the compilation purpose. If we need to compile, so with the help of the compiler, our program will compile, or our code will transform into the machine level language. And that's why we have this program, application program object code. That is the point. So now this is the point you have to understand properly. So I am just highlighting, or I am just marking by this point over here. So these are the 2 points you have to understand. Name user will just make connect the program which is already written with the help of the application programming application interfaces. The application program will be accessible by the name user. But the application programmer will write the specialized code to access the database with the help of the application program, and these application program written to the English statement. So these should be converted into the machine level language so machine can easily understand. So these are known as the application program. So this is the compiler and linker, so I have to use. So this will be connected by this one. Okay, so one by one I will ask. So far any doubt? So far any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay, so now sophisticated users are the user which use the query tools to write the query, and our queries are known as the simple queries. This is just simple query we are writing. So as an user, I am writing something to the my system, and I'm accessing the query result. So based on the database DBML, database manipulation language compiler queries, not compiler we can say, database manipulation language, so our queries will be executed. So our queries will be executed. That is a point we have to understand. So as a name user, as an application programmer, if I'm writing something, I'm writing the standardized query. So after converting my query will connect to the database language compiler, and database manipulation language or database compiler will show me the result properly what I have written. It is a simple example. I need to display the list of the students who belong to the Neha name. So what happened? I will be able to see only those student details who belong to the Neha name only. So that is can be also fulfilled by the application programming who are writing the specialized code to write the code of the students who belong to the Neha name only, and name user also selecting the typing the Neha only into the text box, and with the text box after selecting the appropriate application I am able to see only those details. So that's why this database manipulation language query will be connected with the application program object code and vice versa over here. So we have this, and now application program will also be connected to this one right now. Now that is the only point we have to understand. Now so far is it clear to right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now database
Yes,
administrator,
sir.
yeah, DBA is the our database administrator is the person, or the DBA is a user which are holding the all the privileges. Name user just name user could be like you as a student. Student will not able to update anything. Suppose that, and so name user you could be, because you are not able to change anything over the VTalk. So as a faculty, you only put the details only of the student marks and attendance only. I'm not able to change my profile only. You are student also not able to change anything. I'm not able to change any contact detail of the students. So depends on the privileges. What are the privileges I have? So my responsibilities and my facilities will be modified. But database administrator is the administrator, the user who will keep all the privileges and who can update, who can change anything. So that is also followed by some tools, and those tools are known as the administrator tools. So we have this point. So here we have a DDL interpreter. DDL interpreter means data definition language. This user can create the database. User can create the database. User can also modify the databases. But as a new user, application programming sophisticated users are not doing so. They are just manipulating the details only. They are just trying to insert data. They are just trying to see. They can only deal with the data only. Sophisticated user, application programmer, name user can only deal with the data. But the database administrator will able to handle the structure of the database. So as an application, I'm just giving the right to the name user. You can read the record, read the any structure or any table. So all the data will be lost. So that is the point you have to understand. If you are removing the one record, that is enough. But you are removing the entire table or entire database, so the stored information will also be lost. That is the point you have to understand. So detail means data definition language, that is the interpreter we have over here, and queries will also be manipulated. And these queries will also be handled by a database compiler, so that is known as the database manipulation language compiler and organizer. And that is a point we have to understand, we have to keep in mind properly. So this is known as the database manipulation language compiler and organizer. And here, if as a user I am writing a query, I have a query over the Google, I am passing some message. Over the Google, I am passing I need to display the name of the books, which is starting by the course and the course author. So I can able to see the list of the many books. So what happened? And this is my query, and this query will be executed by the database compiler. So after some times, after the few couple of seconds, I'm able to see So this is also represented by our query evaluation engine. So with the help of the query evaluation engine, our query will be evaluated, and that is known as the query evaluation engine. That is a important point while discussing something properly we will able to see. So this is our first part of the internal of our database. As a user, we know who is a naive user, who is the application programmer, who is a sophisticated user. But as a machine will identify some other component. So we have this component that is known as the query processor. So query processor is our component of the database which is used to handle the compilation process, which is handled to manage the query, which is evaluate the queries, and which is required to compile the our queries properly, and the queries are coming from the new user, application programmer, sophisticated user, or database administrator. So the queries which are passing from the different kind of user are handled by the query process. How the query will be processed, and this is the first component I can speak over here from our database system architecture. Now, is it clear to all right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is the point. I can write over here for betterment. All these are the various kind of the users. So in the examination of for your providing the confusion, if I ask you the question, what are the users we have in the database, then you have to write for these kind of the users. What are those? New users, application programmers, sophisticated users, and database administrator. Okay, so that is an important point you have to understand. And now, first point, internally we have the data query processor. So what is the role of the query processor? I have explained over here. Now, next we have a storage manager. Storage manager is the second component of our architecture, which describe that what are the kind of the storage mechanisms we can do. First one is the buffer manager. So buffer manager is what actually? Buffer manager is what is mean by the buffer? Can you tell me right now what is mean by the buffer? Yes, anyone who have any idea what is mean by the buffer?
Sir, it's kind of like speed management, like to equalize the CPU and processor and the memory speed.
No, actually, buffer means manager. I will tell you later on, but just let me clear to this term buffer. Buffer means you're talking about the temporary storage area. So when I'm just writing anything, I'm creating a new file. Just let me explain. I'm creating any file. Okay, it doesn't mean what kind of file I'm creating. I'm creating any file. So I didn't save my data on my main disk or hard disk, I can say. So temporarily, I'm just writing something on my screen, but so far I didn't save my file. I didn't save the content of my file. Then what happened? This temporarily, what I have typed over here, that is temporarily stored in somewhere other places. So that is the role of the RAM, that is random access memory. So random access memory RAM, that is RAM, which is holding the our data for temporary movement. So when I'm just clicking on the save button, then my data which is stored in the RAM, that is primary memory, will pass on to the secondary memory, or we can say the our disk. That is a buffer. So buffer is what? Buffer is a temporary stored area, and that is a point we have to understand. So while writing the query, I'm writing the query. If I'm not saving my query, listen carefully. If I'm not saving my query, so after some times, after executing my query, I'm able to get my data over the screen, and where it is stored, and that is stored by the RAM, that is the random access memory. The architecture of the computer architecture should be clear to you. Without clearing all the concept, without knowing the functionality of any component of the computer, you are not able to understand any subject of the computer in detail. So buffer manager, we have this term. So buffer manager is a buffer manager which is manage the temporary store area. So definitely it is also required to manage the storage manager. After typing the query, after searching over the internet, my dear, just tell me right now, after searching over the internet, what I'm searching over the internet, and that is stored permanently? No, that is the point you have to understand. So this is a buffer manager, and this buffer manager connected to the data, and this data or indices. Okay, so that is the point you have to understand. So buffer is clear to all right now. This buffer manager is clear
Yes,
to
sir.
right now. So buffer manager means a tool internally we have in the database which is used to handle the temporary storage area, and this is connected with our data. Okay, and this also be connected by the indices. Indices means kind of the data which keep the information into the shorted way. Okay, if I storing the student detail, so my information I can store the detail on the first come first serve basis primarily. That is a sense of the database. This is the point. But if I need to store my information in form of the shorted way, so what I will do, I will create the index indexing on the any column, that is the student roll number, student name. So if I keep the data in the index form by the student name wise, student roll number wise, or the class wise, so I need to create the index. So that is, we have multiple indexes, we have index that is from get index. Now file manager. So if I need to save my data permanently, and from the saved data, if I need to write the query, if I need to access my some data, so we have a file manager. So that is a point we have to understand. And this will also be connected by the query evaluation engines, where our query will be evaluated. That is a point. So if I'm writing the any query, select the star from the any student detail. So this is my query. If I'm saving this query, so my query will be evaluated engine will save the data into the permanently into my hard disk. So that is also managed by the file manager. If I'm not saving, and that is handled by the buffer, so we have a buffer manager. And this also should be connected by our data, and this also should be connected by our indices. Now, and that is the point we have the next authorization and integrity manager. Integrity manager, as we have seen the integrity constraint, what is integrity problem we have in our traditional file system. So definitely all the data should be interrelated, and those are connected or those are interrelated by the integrity manager. So that is the point we have over here, an authorization. So no one, no unethical person, or we can say the non-authorized person, will not able to access your data. So that is a point which is also handling by the database manager. So all the password, all the sensitive data we can manage by the authorization step. So that is the point. So this is also managed by the that is also handled by the data dictionary. Data dictionary means data about the data, and this is also known as the metadata. So this also connected with the database compiler, because if I need to access the hierarchical of data, if I need to access the network of the data, then our database compiler will connect to the data dictionary to get the metadata or to get the data of the data. So that's why it is also connected with over here. So that's why we have the there is a pointer. Yeah, this is one. So database compiler will connect to the this one, data dictionary, and authorization will also be connected with the data dictionary. And now in the database compiler is also connected with the this point, that is the statistical data. So when we have to store the statistical data means some mathematical operation I'm applying. I need to get the data of those students who belong to the Bhopal city. Suppose it. So what I'm doing, I'm applying the condition. I need to display the sum of all the students who belong to the XYZ age. So this is what this is my constraint I'm applying to my database. So by applying the statistical data, it means I'm talking about the some mathematical or functions. I can write over here some mathematical function based I'm storing some data, so that is also known as the mathematical. So I can write over here for betterment mathematical functions I can apply into the statistical data. I need to display only those students who are having the age more than the 20 years. So this is what I'm applying condition. That condition is followed by the mathematical approach. So that is a so there are many functions, just like the sum, count, or maximum and maximum. So there are many functions by which I can do. Okay. And transaction manager. This transaction manager is also be connected with our query evaluation process. So query evaluation engine will connect all the manager to access the details and to evaluate our query. So transaction manager means what are the transactions we are doing. So we can do the multiple transactions on the same account. It means we are accessing the same data on the same times by the many people. It is also possible. So this is also managed by the transaction manager. So transaction itself is a small unit of the any database operation. So they're performing any operation as a single unit, and there could be the many sub-components. So that is also dealing with the transaction manager, and we will see transaction processing system in the transaction study in our module 4th. We will see in detail manner. 5th module we will see the transaction concurrency control. So this is also required to manage by the transaction manager. And this is the our important component which describe the storage manager how it looks. So I can say this is the point I can just draw for a better man, and this is managed by the storage manager. Okay, tell me right now, any doubt so far in the storage manager? Any doubt?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
And last point, we have the disk storage, where the actual data will be stored into the physical mode. That is the so if I'm storing the any detail in the physical mode, so that is stored into our hard disks, and that could be the hard disk, that could be any disk where information will be stored into the permanent. So we have a data, we have indexes, I just told you, the dictionary, statical data. So this is the architecture we have to keep in mind. And to remember this diagram, first I'm telling you all right now, just divide the component into the four parts. One is users part, so what are the users, another part is query processor, another part is the storage manager, and next part is the disk storage. Just keep in mind there are the four components of our database system architecture we have to understand, and this is the basic term we have to keep in mind. Okay, so tell me right now, any doubts so far you have? Anyone, you need to ask any question from the any component, and how these are connected, so we have to keep in mind as it is, and what are the role each and everything, so I've explained over here. Tell me right now, any doubts so far?
So dividing the work of query evaluation engine. So can you explain it once again?
Yeah. See, after writing the any query to the database, so query evaluation engine basically evaluate the query. Are you writing the query? See, it is just like simple example. If you need to do one, if you try to add two numbers, 1011, and then you are adding the 2999. So what happened if I'm adding the 19? So what happened 19? So there will be a zero and there will be the one carry, that is a one. So there is a query evaluation will work like this one. What are the rules to write the queries? Our query will be divided into the different parts. From which point you need to access the data, from which table you want to access data, and what are the information you want to have. In our table, we have the many data, but I need to see only the student contact numbers only. So this is what this is the filtering information I'm accepting. So my query evaluation engine will do work like this one. My query evaluation engine will check the what is the query to post it into the database system, and what the information to be displayed. So I need to display only the student contact name, contact number. So why it will display the contact? Why it will display the student's name, roll number, class, and detail flow? So that is the query evaluation engine will do work like this manner. The query evaluation engine is a more important component, and that part we will see in detail manner into our coming classes. What is the role of the query evaluation engine? And that is more applicable while studying into the transaction and query. That is important. The query processor is the more important part, where the query will be processed, and how it is processed with the help of all these components. While see, very practically, if you're writing the program, what you feel, I'm writing the program on the ID and my program will be compiled and I'm getting the output. But there are other interfaces that are available, linker, loader, and what is the compiler I'm using. So after compiling my object code will be created. So these are the points we have to keep in mind. But we are not think about all those points. We are always thinking about the just what we are able to see only. That's why I'm saying over here the architecture will talk about only those parts which are not able to see by the user. So as a user will able to see query, as a user I'm able to see only the output. But what are the other mechanisms implicitly done by our architecture or by our database? That is the point. Okay, now clear?
So basically, my question was that the components of storage manager, how do they come instrumental in for the processing query evaluation engines values and the data that it feeds into
So
it?
see, that is a storage manager components are not any physical device. All these query evaluation processor on database processor are kind of the written in the code only. That is the point. You have to understand. Query processor and storage manager are not the physical devices or physical components. These are our logical written code which describe the each and everything properly. So that is the point. Just like the linker loader are not the physical component. These are the logical component which is manipulate the program, which is used to run the program. Same thing, the query processor and storage manager are the our logical component which are written into the from the code and how they are managing. That is the point. User and the physical device, physical component we can say, and disk is could be the physical component we can say. But other two parts which are highlighting me into the two different colors, which are the logical component, which are we required to manipulate the information in the databases. So these are not the physical instrument or physical components. These are the logical components. And buffer manager, how the buffer manager is not a device. Manager is not a IC or a chip. These are the code, these are the chunk of the code by which the buffer will be managed, and that is a part of the storage manager. Yes,
Okay.
now tell me. Okay. So that's why I highlighted these 2 points by the colors, except to the other points. That is the point you have to understand. Yes, student, tell me right now, any problem?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is just idea and important points